What is going on, Crimson Tide fans? Chris Daughtry here with the Alabama Football Report. Appreciate you guys joining us for today's show. And coming up on today's show, we're going to give an update on the Kelby Collins situation. Alabama trying to get him out of the transfer portal from Florida, but there's been a little bit of a change in his visitation, when he's going to be visiting. Nothing crazy or anything like that, so don't freak out. Alabama definitely still one of the top teams for him, but there is going to be a little bit of a change when he will be visiting the Crimson Tide. We'll also talk about decision time. A lot of players for Alabama, underclassmen in particular, have a decision to make whether or not they want to go off to the 2025 NFL draft or they want to come back for Alabama's 2025 season. So those are the two main topics on today's show. And before we get into all the Kelby Collins situation and everything like that, let me know in the comment section how many Alabama players will get drafted in the first round of the 2025 NFL Draft. Definitely not as many as we've had in the past, but there's still some guys with a chance to go in the first round. So let me know your prediction in the comment section of today's video. All right, first thing up on today's show, we're going to talk about Kelby Collins here. The Crimson Tide trying to go after him in the transfer portal. Now, there was some situations that came up. He had to move out of his apartment in Gainesville. He also had a visit set up to Texas A&M. So he's going to be visiting Texas A&M Wednesday and Thursday. Originally was supposed to be in Tuscaloosa on Thursday and Friday. It was supposed to be a multi-day visit anyways. Possibly that could have gone to Saturday as well. But now he will be visiting Alabama Friday and Saturday. So still going to get that visit with the Crimson Tide. Hopefully that Texas A&M visit doesn't overshadow anything, and he still does give the Crimson Tide a chance. But, we talked about it a little bit on our previous shows. Alabama was his number 2 team coming out of high school, so I think that does carry some weight. And we've talked about him being a SEC, on the SEC All-Freshman team in 2023, and there was a big regression in 2024. But, the main reason for that was because he started off as a freshman. He was at that outside linebacker / edge rusher spot. And he really did have a phenomenal year in 2023 as a freshman. You see right there, played 12 games, had a couple sacks, a couple TFLs, 23 tackles as well. But then in 2024, he saw a dip in, his playing time there, moving over to that defensive end spot. You've seen a couple Alabama players, kind of fall into that same boat, falling back on the depth chart because of that. But look, Alabama really likes Kelby Collins, and I do think he can help you on the defensive line as well. You're going to be losing guys like Tim Smith, Tim Keon we'll talk about on the back half of today's show. Jamarian Latham, he's out of eligibility as well, so he'll be off to the NFL draft. LT Overton, there's a chance that he goes off to the NFL draft as well. So, I know a lot of people have been worried about Alabama's defensive line and kind of where it sits. You also got Devonta Henry and Steve Mbamua in this 2025 class. We'll see where Henry plays. It's kind of been mentioned he could play the bandit position, or he could be kind of that outside linebacker / wolf position as well. So we'll see what happens there. Kind of think Steve Mbamua plays more that defensive tackle, just somewhere on the interior of the defensive line as well. But like I said, I know a lot of you guys out there are very nervous about the interior or just this defensive line room in general with how kind of small the depth is right now. I do think Alabama goes out there in the transfer portal and tries to pick up some more defensive linemen like Kelby Collins as well. So let me know at the pinned comment of today's video, are you guys worried about the defensive line depth here going into the 2025 season for the Crimson Tide? Type Y for yes or N for no at the pinned comment, especially if that ad comes here on YouTube. It is also decision time for a few Alabama players out there, underclassmen, who have played well and have an opportunity to go off to the NFL draft this year. There's, I think we have like 13 players or something like that we're going to discuss on today's show. But first, before we get into those players, just want to, highlight some players that are completely out of eligibility here. These are the guys who participated on Senior Day, and I believe for the most part, I've checked most of these guys here. I believe all these guys are out of eligibility. That COVID year kind of throws a loop through things here in 2024. We're 4 years later. I think there's still some guys out there who have that extra year if they want to take it. But These guys will not be returning for you. James Burnham, C.J. Dupree, Neelan Himmett is your long snapper there. Justin Jefferson, he played a big role for you, especially once Deontay Lawson went down for you. Jamarian Latham, Malachi Moore as well. Graham Nicholson, so we're going to see what Connor Talty has in store for us next year. Robbie Oots is out of eligibility. It seems like he's been at Alabama since 2002. Quandarius Robinson, suffered a bad injury later in the season. Unfortunately, was not able to finish the season with Alabama. He's also out of eligibility. And then you got Tim Smith, another guy who seems like he's just been here forever. Those guys are definitely going off to the NFL draft or just graduating at the end of the day. But there are some underclassmen that we're also going to talk about on the back half of today's show. So coming up next, after we get into our sponsor of the show today, we're going to talk about who are some of those most likely candidates to go off to the NFL draft here in the 2025 NFL draft. Before we get into that, though, I want to give a shout out to our sponsor today, Game Time. Game Time has a new feature now called Game Time Picks. It makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams play live even easier. Game Time Picks filters out all the fluff to show you only the incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. It's just curation that makes it easier to save more on sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and everything else in between. Game Time has killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and the lowest prices guaranteed. We're into basketball season now, and Alabama's got one of the best basketball teams in the country. You can go see the Crimson Tide play on the hardwood with Game Time. You can also go ahead and get tickets to the Relia Quest Bowl coming up here on New Year's Eve against Michigan. But I definitely recommend, if you're in or around Tuscaloosa, to go watch this Alabama basketball team and Nate Oates play. They are definitely, they have a chance to go on a run in March Madness here coming up here in a couple of months. You can take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app today, create an account, and redeem promo code CHATSPORTS for $20 off your first purchase. Just check out GameTime.co for last-minute tickets. Terms do apply, but again, create an account and redeem promo code CHATSPORTS, CHATSPORTS, for $20 off your first purchase. That link will be in the comment section and the description of today's show. So download Game Time today. Because what time is it? It's game time. All right, first up, we're going to start off with the defensive backs here. You got Domani Jackson, DeVonta Smith, and Keon Sabb. And the number that you see right beside them there is the Pro Football Focus top 250 big board that they have out there. And look, I think you look at a guy like Domani Jackson, and I think he's getting a little bit of the Kool-Aid McKinstry vibes that we saw last year. Now, a little bit of difference here, in terms of context and everything like that. Kool-Aid was a projected first-round pick going in to that last season with Alabama. Domani Jackson's up in the air. Nobody really knew how good or bad he was going to be. But, man, you look at the stats right there. He was really good for Alabama this year. Arguably one of your best defensive backs. Definitely your best cornerback this year for Alabama. And the numbers look very, very similar to Kool-Aid McKinstry. Kool-Aid also at the end of the season, they found out at the NFL Combine that he had a Jones fracture in his foot as well. So that kind of, was the reason more or less why he dropped to the second round of the NFL draft. But, man, if Domani Jackson wanted to go to the NFL draft, I personally think talent-wise he should be a top 2-round guy. But, I mean, look, right now he's sitting at 194 overall in the PFF big board. So, I mean, if that's going to be your grade for him, I would say he probably doesn't go off to the NFL draft, even though he did have an incredible season for Alabama this year. So we'll see what happens with Domani Jackson, but I do think talent-wise he should be up there, but we'll see what happens. If you're not a first or second round guy and you're an underclassman, I think you should definitely stay. You also have DeVonta Smith, Keon Sabb as well. Obviously, Keon Sabb got injured during the season, so that has sidelined him here for the rest of the season. DeVonta Smith, though, played incredible for you this year at that Husky position. You definitely saw a difference when he was out there versus any of those other guys, whether that be Red Morgan or King Mack. Those guys played very well, too, especially Red Morgan being a freshman there. But, man, DeVonta Smith, I think, was one of your guys in that defensive backfield that had that dog in him more than really anybody else. Love Malachi Moore, but when it comes to that dog mentality, I don't know if he has it the way DeVonta Smith has it. So, look, I like what Alabama's got coming back next year, but I would absolutely love if those three guys came back, to really bolster Alabama's defensive backfield next season. So if any of these three guys decide to go off to the NFL draft, who do you think it's going to be? Type DJ if you think it's going to be Domani Jackson. Type DS if you think it's DeVonta Smith. Or type KS if you think it's going to be Keon Sabb. Over to the linebackers now. You got two notable linebackers, obviously. We talked about Justin Jefferson. He is out of eligibility, so he has to go off to the NFL draft. But you also have Jihaad Campbell, who has really been your best player on defense this year. He's sitting there at number 43 overall in the PFF big board. And then Deontay Lawson, really hoped he was going to have a better season than he did. Didn't have a bad season by any means, but definitely didn't take that next step that I know a lot of us thought he was going to. They have him ranked at number 177 overall. Jihaad Campbell, though, man, he's going to go first round of the NFL draft. I think definitely for sure. He's been getting a ton of buzz. Didn't really come into the season as one of those guys that, was really standing out preseason, first round, way too early mock drafts and things like that. But the more and more mock drafts that we keep doing here at Chat Sports on our main channel, Jihaad Campbell is finding his way into those first round conversations. So definitely think he's going to be a guy that goes off to the NFL. Deontay Lawson, don't really quite know what's going to happen with him. Obviously, he suffered a pretty severe leg injury later on in the season here, but like I said, didn't have the greatest season for you. Didn't have a terrible season, but, didn't, I don't think, live up to expectations like we all thought he was going to. You're also losing Quandarius Robinson as well. So we'll see what happens with Deontay Lawson. I assume these guys are going to declare for the NFL draft probably after the bowl game. But, look, he's got more eligibility left. So if he wants to come back to Alabama, like I said, you're losing both of those middle linebackers, Justin Jefferson and Jihaad Campbell. If you have guys like, Deontay Lawson and Jeremiah Alexander there, I think that will be, a pretty solid tandem there at those middle linebacker spots. Over to the defensive line now. Tim Keenan, man, he's not even ranked in the PFF top 250 big board. I think that, I don't know. Tim Keenan didn't make a lot of splash plays for you. But look, on the defensive line, those defensive linemen, those DTs, don't really ever make a lot of splash plays. You don't really want to look at the tackle numbers and things like that for them. Really, you want to look at that stuff rate and things like that, those stops, your average depth of tackle, things like that for defensive tackles. And look, at the collegiate level anyways, Tim Keenan has been really good in terms of being a run defender for Alabama. So I would love to get him back this year. We'll see what happens with him. Or I hope he comes back next year. Like I said, we'll see what happens with him. But, look, Nick Saban said all the time, if you're not going in the first or second round probably and you're an underclassman, you should probably come back. Going over to LT Overton, though, now. He transferred from Texas A&M, former five-star, started off the season so hot, so disruptive for Alabama, but then kind of cooled off. The PFF grade has him at the number 37 player overall. So while he started off very hot for Alabama, I think he kind of teetered off towards the end. And really, I think that number 37 grade that PFF has for him is more of what he did and his potential that he had in the front half of the season, more so than the second half of the season. But you see right there, still had 35 pressures on the season. So, overall, that's really, really good for Alabama. And I do also think in that defensive line room, you got a lot of guys at that bandit position coming up. So LT Overton, Jamarian Latham, you're losing both of those guys at that bandit position. But I still do think you have a solid rotation there going into that 2025 season. Over to the offense now. We'll start off on the offensive line. Jaden Roberts sitting there at number 127. Didn't have the best year for Alabama either. Really struggled, staying on the field with injuries. You had Geno Vandermark in there as well, kind of swapping in and out with him throughout the season. So I thought he was going to be one of those guys that was going to play his way into a first or second round grade. But because he struggled with those injuries, it just did not really happen for him that way. Parker Brailsford, what an amazing story he's been for Alabama, coming over from Washington with Kalen DeBoer. The one knock on Parker Brailsford is really NFL scouts thinks he's too small, and whether that's right or wrong, I'll leave that up to them. They get paid the big bucks to make those decisions. But look, what he actually did on the field for Alabama with an SEC schedule, I thought he did phenomenal. Tyler Booker, they have him ranked at that number 66 player overall. Most mock drafts that I've seen out there, he's kind of been slipping to the second round. So we'll see if he goes first or second round. But you're definitely going to lose Tyler Booker. Look, whether we like it or not, he's going off to the NFL draft. But two other names to monitor as well as Jaden Roberts and Parker Brailsford along the offensive line. So like I said, look, guys, Parker Brailsford, one of the best centers in, the SEC this year and really even all of college football, but really not getting the credit I don't think that he probably does deserve. So what do you guys think? Let me know in the comments section. Will Parker Brailsford declare for the 2025 NFL Draft? Type 1 for yes or 0 for no on today's video. Over to the wide receivers now. Only one that Alabama is really looking at losing here, besides going to the transfer portal and things like that, is Jeremy Bernard. Right now, he's not even ranked on the PFF big board. So if you want Jeremy Bernard to come back, that's probably a good thing. And really haven't heard any vibes out there that he would even be thinking about going off to the NFL draft. But he was the top 2 wide receiver for Alabama this season. Does have some more years of eligibility left, but still is able to go to the NFL draft if he wants to. He had over 700 yards for Alabama this season, but I do think he's definitely a guy that it would definitely behoove for him to stay with Alabama next year because he's still going to be a top 2 wide receiver for Alabama next year, but like I said, does have that ability to declare for the NFL draft if he wants to. Going over to the running back spot now, Jam Miller can also declare for the NFL draft if he wants to. And you guys know at this point how I feel about the usage of the running backs this year. I don't think they were used as much as they were. You see right there, only had 135 carries on the season. I don't think he's the same talent, but you look to a guy like Ashton Jeanty, had over 350 carries, was Boise State, frankly, he was Boise State's entire offense. But look, you got to get this guy the ball more. I think there's 2 real options, I think, for Jam Miller. It's either to come back or it's going to be hitting the transfer portal. Really hope he ends up coming back for Alabama. But like I said, not rated right or ranked right now on the PFF big board. So I would assume either it would be coming back or the transfer portal there for Jam Miller. And the last player we're going to talk about here on today's show is Jalen Milroe. Right now, he's ranked number 12 overall on the PFF big board. I believe he's still the number 3 quarterback on the Mel Kiper quarterbacks big board as well. And there's a lot of options out there right now for Jalen Milroe. I think what's going to happen with him, I think he's going to go off to the NFL draft. And I think there's going to be a GM at the Combine that absolutely falls in love with him because, look, Jalen Milroe is a very, very personable player. He's a very nice person. And look, when it comes to watching tape and his work ethic and everything else like that, you just take away the skill set of what he can do running the ball, especially. I think there's going to be a GM out there that really does fall in love with him. I think he will go in the first round of the NFL draft because, look, this quarterback class, quite frankly, just isn't that good. You got Shedeur Sanders, you got Cam Ward, and then it's kind of a toss-up from there. I really do think Jalen Milroe probably is the a top 3 quarterback here in the 2025 NFL draft, and in a year where his skill set probably goes later, probably in the second round, maybe even falls to the third round. I think second round is probably more realistic there. But in this quarterback class, with a draft class with a lot of quarterback-needy teams, especially up top, I think Jalen Milroe is going to go off to the NFL draft, and I do think he will be selected in the first round. Let me know in the comments section, last thing on today's show, guys. What do you think Jalen Milroe does after the Alabama's bowl game against Michigan? He, as far as we know right now, is expected to play in that bowl game as well. Type D if you think he goes off to the 2025 NFL Draft. Type S if you think he stays another year here with the Crimson Tide. Or type T if you think he goes off to the transfer portal. Make sure you guys are also subscribed right here to the Alabama Football Report. We've got daily news and rumors for you guys. We'll be updating you on all things Alabama football, especially the transfer portal and Alabama's bowl game coming up here on New Year's Eve. So do not miss out. Make sure you guys are subscribed.